fight. One.
Shaq, I want to bring you back in. This is some reporting from the New York Times Live blog, which I have in front of me as a viewer's guide. One of their reporters said the defense had suggested that George Floyd swallowed a methamphetamine pill when the officers approached him. Dr. Baker, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Floyd, said he did not find any pill fragments in his stomach. What is your sense of how the prosecution now sort of comes in and tries to knock back testimony like that they've put in the water now, and obviously the jury's already heard?
Well, you know, this is something that we've heard from Eric Nelson and the defense through cross-examination of prior witnesses. I mean, that goes to the idea of it was the defense attorneys that originally found that chewed-up pill with George Floyd's DNA in the back of the squad car. That wasn't part of the initial processing of the scene. That pill wasn't found until January when the defense attorneys went back and examined it. So this is something that has been a part of the process throughout. That was something that they asked some of the investigators about, and that's something that you heard Eric Nelson ask Dr. Baker about. But I think the key thing here and the bottom line is they're saying there's no evidence to suggest that this contributed significantly to his death, something you heard from Dr. Thomas. And she said his death wasn't consistent with what you would see in a fentanyl overdose. You heard that from Dr. Tobin yesterday. You have expert after expert at this point coming up and saying it's not the drugs, it's the restraint, it's the subdual. That is the significant part of the reason why George Floyd died. Yes, he had drugs in his system. Yes, he had prior medical conditions, but absent of the knee on the neck, my shorthand, he would still be alive today. So that's the thing that I think we have to focus the jury on. And I think that will likely come up when we do get to closing arguments, which, by the way, we have a little bit of news on that. We do know that the prosecution will be resting their case early next week. We know that can happen as soon as Monday, possibly Tuesday. We know that based on some conversations that were overheard in court earlier this week with the defense bringing back one of their witnesses. But we do know the prosecution is just days away, possibly hours away from officially resting their case.
Well, that's a big headline there from you, Shaq. Rev, let me bring you in on this. I have two questions now. One, how's the family holding up? Obviously, this testimony is so central to the case, the cause of death, but this is their family member, this is their loved one, a brother, a father, a son. How are they doing?
It's a very, very, very painful experience for them, but they are strong. I've dealt with a lot of families. I've not dealt with any family that has been stronger. I talk with Philondas, the brother, sometimes Rudy, sometimes all of them. I speak upon every day and pray with them, and I go out once a week. I was there Tuesday, and I'm amazed at how determined they are. They are pained. This is very painful to them. They're watching the video over and over again of their brother, their cousin, their father narrating his own death. So this is very painful, but they are just as determined. Sometimes when I was there Tuesday, Philondas looked at me and said, "You told me keep fighting, I'm gonna keep fighting." It's almost like they talked themselves into continuing. It's a very, very painful thing for them.
And it's just a good reminder that we can get so clinical in our analysis, but we're watching day after day. I remember the first day, Shaq, you and Brett were with me. It's hard to look at what the jury's been asked to look at, the final moments of a man's life. And I wonder, Harry Litman, if you can widen the lens with us on the heels of Shaq's news there, that the prosecution may rest its case early next week, perhaps even as early as Monday. What do you make of the case that has been presented to the jury by the prosecution so far?
So they've done a really solid job, Nicole, and especially with the centerpiece. They said in opening, you can believe your eyes, and they had us look at it sort of many different ways and gave a sense of the community and the police invading as opposed to just a kind of isolated skirmish. Now we move to the defense. The big question, will Chauvin testify? It's probably the last thing he wants to do, but maybe the only thing he has left. The reason he doesn't want to do it is there are all these other allegations of misconduct that if he testifies, the jury will hear about. They'll hear about them ostensibly to assess his credibility, but everybody knows that their thinking will be 18 times, then you know he did it again. It's a very, very hard decision for them. My best guess is they won't call him, but it is their last card to play. The final thing to think about, now that things are going so well, will the jury be able to distinguish and piece together the second-degree murder charge and the third degree? Because the second degree is pretty confusing. It's kind of legalistic. And if there's a third-degree conviction here and not a second degree, I mean, I would defer to Shaq and the Reverend, but I'm not sure that will play as a victory. So that kind of big drama remains, notwithstanding that the core of the prosecution's case has been presented so strongly, and they seem on a glide path to some sort of conviction.
Your name has been invoked, Shaq Brewster. I'll let you weigh in on that. Any insights into either whether the defense plans to have Chauvin testify or how the prosecution plans to present some of those really technical legal issues between Murder 2 and Murder 3?
No, I think that's the big question everyone's asking. Everyone's wondering whether or not Derek Chauvin will testify. And the defense gave no signals in their opening statement whether or not Derek Chauvin will take the stand in defense of himself. One thing that we saw during jury questioning is the defense continuously reminded the jurors, as they were being questioned, the jurors and the potential jurors, that Derek Chauvin didn't have to take the stand, that there doesn't have to be a defense, that the burden of proof is on the prosecution. So you saw they were trying to prime these potential jurors, and now the jury that's sitting there for the idea of Derek Chauvin not coming up, not explaining to himself and his actions. But we haven't gotten any word, any wind of whether or not Derek Chauvin will take the stand. And then you go to those complex issues. I mean, that's going to be the fight once we get past the defense witnesses and once we get past those closing arguments, what those jury instructions will say and what specifically will be told to the jury, who these are not legal professionals. They don't know the law, but they all agree to follow the law as it is given to them by the judge. What those instructions will say, that's going to be a pretty major fight once we get to that point, Nicole.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.
How can Experian Boost help you?
With Experian Boost, my credit score went up 19 points.
I've tried other... That's Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. He says he's planning to fight back as federal investigators look into whether he was involved in sex trafficking involving underage girls. Now, Gaetz has hired an outside public relations firm and two prominent New York attorneys, Mark Mukasey and Isabel Kirshner, to represent him. The team issued a statement today saying, quote, Matt has always been a fighter for his constituents, a fighter for the country, and a fighter for the Constitution. He's going to fight back against the unfounded allegations against him. His legal team will take the fight to those trying to smear his name with falsehood. And that statement comes as he's set to headline an event at one of former President Donald Trump's Florida golf clubs, and as one of his Republican colleagues is calling on him to resign. All right, joining us now is NBC News national political reporter Sahil Kapoor. So, Sahil, we've got, Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger now. He's the first Republican to say that Gaetz should step down. Other Republicans have been radio silent about this. Where do you expect this to head next?
Well, we don't know that, the answer to that, Jeff, and that is the big question. Is Congressman Kinzinger a canary in the coal mine among Republicans, or is he kind of the odd one out? Here's what we do know. Kinzinger has been among the Republicans who is more willing to buck his party and specifically criticize the Trump wing of his party. Recall, he was the first House Republican to come out in favor of impeaching the former president, and at the end of the day, there were only 10 House Republicans in total who voted in favor of impeachment, so he ended up being kind of part of a minority there. We don't really know where Republican leadership is going to come down either. Kevin McCarthy, the House Republican leader, has said the allegations against Gaetz are serious. He intends to sit down and talk to him. Now, some may recall he said a similar thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene when there was some serious criticism of her and ultimately let her go. The reality is the power within the Republican Party is still with that wing, the Marjorie Taylor Greene wing, the Matt Gaetz wing, the Trump wing, frankly. And his defeat has done very little to dislodge that.
We've got now with us NBC News investigative reporter Tom Winter. So, Tom, the investigation into Gaetz was born out of a probe into a former Florida tax collector and this Gaetz associate named Joel Greenberg. And we learned yesterday that he is likely going to take a plea in a case against him. So where do things stand on that front, and what does it mean for Matt Gaetz?
Right, so a couple of people have reached out to me, and I know folks might be concerned because there was a story and some reporting today that he pleaded not guilty. He had to, Jeff, that's part of the process at this point. He was handed a superseding indictment about a week and a half or so ago, and so he had to enter a plea. And of course, you're not going to say that you're guilty without getting the benefits of a guilty plea agreement with it. So that's why today happened. As far as the discussions going forward, that's something that they hope to wrap up, I would say, by early May. They've set a preliminary deadline of May 15th for plea discussions to either come to a conclusion with an agreement or for there to be a trial sometime this summer. So that's where things stand as far as those discussions. Look, I think the attorney for Greenberg made it very clear yesterday outside of court that they're hoping to limit his criminal exposure as much as possible. The most effective way of doing that is cooperating at this stage. So it looks like that's the direction that they've headed towards at this point. It'll be interesting to see what Greenberg can offer in this ongoing investigation. He's somebody who's the person we're looking at now on the screen. He's somebody who's taken a lot of pictures with Matt Gaetz, and we recently just obtained his emails and had a number of communications with Gaetz's congressional office. That's something that I was looking at just before speaking with you, Jeff. So we're going to continue to dig into those and some other public documents in this case and see where this goes from here.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite...
You see, this is a lesson to us all, I think. If our friend had known the Russian proverb, he would not be careful now, yes? Here we go. We have business to attend to. Have a look through different cameras. We must find probable location of files. It will be somewhere highly secure. I will look too, from here. Basement. Reinforced walls. This is promising. Look around on the camera. And bingo! dockside. Then I can make estimates for use as a possible infiltration point. Photograph received. This would make good infiltration point, but as I suspected, we would need to acquire a smaller vessel. My submarine is many things, Captain, but small is not one of them. Aha, as I suspected, all packaged up and ready to steal. If you find your way back here during the operation, you will be able to get into this lockup, no problem. And if we find the right tools nearby, you can do it silently. Have a good look around. Anything we can use to break the lock. Bolt cutters, perhaps. This kind of thing should be easy to find at the docks.
Bill. Enrique!
Right this way.
Leave it, are we? Yeah, no problem. So you're doing a good boy. Practically sober. Straight, balanced, the ups and downs in perfect alignment. Yeah, it's a proper ranger back there, but we are off it. Not even going back for one more tune, no, not even a little one. Let's go then. No more boogie, no afters, no watching the sun come up over the ocean in the one place on the planet we can guarantee the marksman powder won't run out. Ah, fuck it. You know what? I'm staying, King. I don't care if I don't have a ride home. Dave will find a way. This thing ain't over yet. Let them go!
How can we contact the blockers?
I think we can go to bin verified.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, we're going back, once again, to Alaska. Alaska, again. We're going to think, what goes on up there? It's so isolated. I mean, does it even exist? Does it, though? Ah, sure, here. I have my fun. And so did James Dale Ritchie in the summer of 2016. James, J-Dog, was described as super intelligent. Unfortunately, he didn't use his gift for good. Nuh-uh. So, there you have it. So, let's get into the story which I'm about to tell you. Which I'll do right now. And my intro sucks! Now, Anchorage has a, well, it was surprising to me, to be honest, but I guess there really is just nothing to do there. A comparatively high rate of crime compared to other U.S. cities. In 2018, Alaska actually got the coveted spot of most violent crimes. Gold medal! It was followed by New Mexico. Although, then again, it's probably not very populated either, so... Bears, man. Though the year we're going to, 2016, it was actually a year when Moinas were kind of low, funnily enough. I say that because we've already been to Alaska in 2016. That was the year David Grunwald died. And it's the year we're going to. The year we're going to because somebody was stopped on the streets and parks of Anchorage. It began on the 3rd of July, a Sunday, with highs of about 17 degrees. It was about 20 to 8 that morning, and a cyclist, cycling, through Ship Creek Trail near downtown Anchorage found 2 people lying on the bike path. They quickly called the police. The 2 people found had been shot dead. They were identified as Brianna Foisey, 20 years old, and 41-year-old Jason Netter Sr. And so when the, investigation began, police didn't really have much to go on. Someone did report that a couple of hours prior, like around 3 or 4 a.m., they had heard about 6 gunshots, in the area, but that was about it. Brianna had a learning disability. She was born with a fetal alcohol disorder. She loved to sing. She had struggled with drugs and had been homeless from time to time. Jason, too, was homeless. He lived right around the corner from where they were both killed, in a junkyard. Jason also battled with drug addiction and had just been released from prison. In fact, a friend of Jason's who shared the storage unit they lived in, with him, He told the police when the investigation began that he thought, maybe they had been killed. Maybe it was a drug deal gone awry or something like that.
I don't like to talk smart to any Tom, Dick, and Harry, and he likes to run his mouth. He had a handful of enemies for doing crappy deals. All I can think of, like I said, dirty drug deal, man, went down. That's what my gut's saying.
It was possible. Anchorage, like most other cities in America, had been suffering from some degree of opioid crisis with gangs and that kind of thing, so it could be that, but then, well, at that stage, who knew? All they had was this. The two victims did know each other, but the police didn't know the extent of their connections. It wasn't believed to be strong. No shell casings were found at the scene, which, were killed by gunshots. It was believed that the weapon used was a revolver. This was confirmed when tests revealed they had been shot with a .357 Colt Python. So now they had a weapon to be on the lookout for. It would be a little over 3 weeks later that it would be used again. On the 29th of July, a few hours after midnight, 3 teenage girls were playing outside when they saw a man standing underneath a lamppost. Shortly after, they saw a guy who approached on a bike. This whole kind of thing creeped them out, so they went inside, and then, not long after, heard gunshots. The guy who was just creepily, creeping on a lamppost, standing there, shot the guy who was riding the bike, just riding past him, took the bike, went off. This was captured on CCTV.
Welcome back, that was Master Classic Clandestine Reconnaissance. And you have a camera, no? Okay, so this is Master Flaring Screen, central hub of the whole operation. Everything you photograph on the island will be displayed here. Infiltration points, exfiltration points, tools, disguises, stashes of money, stashes of other things. You select item on the left. It will be shown in its place on the map.
The victim was 21-year-old Travion Kendall Thompson. He was, by all accounts, a smart, good guy, good-natured guy. He wasn't involved in gangs or drugs at all. No connection to either Brianna or Jason. He worked them when he wasn't working, he was gaming. That's it. The 3 teenage witnesses, said that, well, from what they saw, the 2 guys didn't interact at all. So it is quite different from the first case. In fact, you wouldn't even think they would be linked at all if, the same gun hadn't been used. So this time, there was not only witnesses to the crime scene, there was footage. Due to the CCTV, the police surmised that the shooter was a tall fella, over 6 feet. And thanks to the 3 teens and an FBI artist, they now had a sketch of the shooter, and he was wearing a camo jacket. But other than that, they didn't have much else. And once again, days and weeks would go by. They were on the lookout for a tall guy with long hair wearing a camo jacket. And they were also on the lookout for the yellow bike he stole. They didn't find him.
There's been a lot of things said about Joe
She deserves. And that's when, for the whispers began to spread, that, there might be a serial killer in Anchorage. It was like one of those, my girlfriend's uncle's dog's baby told me there's some guy going around here with like a rocket launcher just killing people for the fun, and he's laughing while he does it.
Until recently, detectives publicly declined to make any connection among the shootings.
Is there evidence that they're related to a serial killer?
We are investigating, and again, anything about the serial killer speculation.
Shit and rumors just like bubbling up all the time, and then it happened again, almost a month, to the day later. On the 28th of August, early morning, once again, 2 more bodies were found. Once again, on a bike path in a popular area, the Valley of the Moon Park. The victims this time were 34-year-old Kevin Turner and 25-year-old Brian Dayhusen. The two victims had no known connections. Kevin was recently homeless. It seemed he'd been shot while sitting in a pavilion, not bothering anyone.
Police have released very little about the Valley of the Moon killings. Turner's family wants answers.
Somebody took the blood. And I really hope that the police will find him. I really hope that the FBI is giving them all the help that they can.
Bryant was an environmental activist who was simply cycling through the area when he was shot. Shot with the same gun he probably stumbled upon the killer killing Kevin with. It was at that point that the police maybe started wanting to deny some rumors. But you know, they released some information to the public, not the sketch and not the gun type, obviously, because if they released what type of gun the killer was using, the killer might stop using it.
Many arrived from the very trail that became the scene of a double murder nearly 2 weeks ago.
People were getting murdered and people were afraid.
Close to 200 came to the Valley of the Moon Park, feeling the weight of recent events.
Are we actually safe? It doesn't feel safe. We really feel for you, and we're here tonight for you.
Both Anchorage's chief of police and its mayor are meeting here, following demands from this neighborhood for increased safety.
Don't permit, the drug dealers and the pimps and the predators and the thugs to take over blocks this park.
We're not going to roll over and surrender any part of this town to people that want to make it unsafe for anybody.
The mayor said community policing does work, but the police department, with its 386 sworn officers, is too few.
Ideally, according to professional standards, there should be almost 450 officers.
The city has advised the public to stay away from certain areas of the trail system.
You say don't go out then, so we failed. Keep giving up our public space. We can't do that.
I think the advice I was trying to give is, it's tough out there. It really is. And you got to look out for yourself, and we got to look out for each other. That's the real message.
The chief was also pressed about who might have committed recent murders.
I've heard that there might be a serial killer.
The worst thing we can do is speculate and cause rumors to go about and so on.
A chance to brainstorm ways of improving the city.
But why don't we put cameras on the park strip?
In light of crimes that have disturbed so many.
But it's not the we can't overcome as a community.
So they did come out with this. Just a little bit of friendly advice, so you don't get killed. Since June 27, 2016, there have been 15 homicide victims. And this came out on the 30th of August, so, of those victims, 6 were engaged in high-risk behaviors and or lifestyles, such as drugs, guns, and criminal activity. Several of the homicides have involved individuals under the age of 21. There have been 4 deaths associated with domestic violence and 5 deaths of individuals that have been outside for the late night and early morning hours, most of which in isolated areas such as bike trails, parks, and unoccupied streets. Criminal activity often increases late at night and during early morning hours. APD wants to remind our citizens to be cautious when they are out during these hours. If you plan to be out late at night, make sure you travel with several friends and are not alone. And just trying to get killed. Won't work for us.
Chief, recently there was a nixel sent out, kind of a cryptic nixel.
There's nothing unusual about this. We advise and try to keep the community informed as best we can.
Does the average person, English people, are these tied together in any way so that it's a lifestyle choice, or is it something that the average person should
need the community's help so much. No matter how little you think that incident, if you're woken up in the middle of the night and you hear loud bangs or whatever, please call the police department, because that piece of information is vital to us figuring things out.
In September 2016, with public wanting a bit more, they released more, including the sketch, and tips started coming in. Tips like, I seen that yellow bike in a neighborhood called Airport Heights. A $10,000 award was offered by the FBI for information leading to the killing. And then it went quiet. Too quiet. Nothing But it would get real loud real soon because of a chance encounter in early November. This would happen almost 3 months after the killer last struck in the Valley of the Moon test with the double homicide. In the wee hours of November 12th, 2016, talking 4:30 a.m., hour of the wolf, the cops are on the beat. That morning was a Saturday after the Friday night. Busy night in Anchorage as people were out on the sauce, having a few subs.
This is how you order all this delivery food for cheap. Okay, so first, Domino's.com, choose your favorite pizza, or in my case, 4. Then click the Honey browser extension. Boom, there it is, $52.56 in savings. Okay, and just for fun, let's try with a fancy meal now. DoorDash.com, click on Honey. Yeah, I guess you could say this is the happiest thing we've been eating delivery. Add the browser extension today and buy pizza, delivery food, and pretty much anything else you can buy online at an absolutely absurd discount. Add Honey today for free at joinhoney.com.
Take a taxi ride, and then just did a letter with the taxi driver. A patrol officer, 38-year-old Aaron Salau, popped on downtown. Check it out. While driving, he saw a fella out for a stroll in the area the suspect was supposed to be in. So Salau asked this guy to stop.
Sir, Anchorage Police, can I get you to stop?
He didn't.
Stop. Oh, gosh, I come up here. The Anchorage Police, you need to stop. This is the Anchorage Police, you need to stop.
Then he suddenly turned around and started walking towards the patrol car, taking something out of his pocket. He then opened fire on Officer Salau with the .357, striking him 4 times. So who was this guy? James Dale Ritchie. He was somebody who really wasn't on the police radar until he unloaded on one. 6 foot tall James Dale Ritchie was nicknamed Tiny. That's not an ironic nickname, by the way. He really was tiny, if you know what I mean. And he was born in 1976, which made him 40 when all this occurred. He was a local, grew up in Anchorage. Being big, he played football and basketball. And he was smart too, scoring 1,200 on his SATs, which is good, I understand. Growing up, he was good friends with Bobby Thompson, who would go on to father Travion Kendall Thompson. Though it's not believed that James knew who he killed, who he murdered. He went to Western Virginia University playing football, but didn't really cut the mustard and returned after 1 semester back to Alaska. For all his prowess, you know, in the classroom and on the football field, though, he wasn't really interested in that. He was more interested in, well, he had what up? He started getting involved with drugs and also dogfighting.
In a letter to a judge, Ritchie once wrote that he wished he would have chosen to play sports at one of the smaller colleges that had pursued it.
Quote, I lay in bed every night thinking about how I've ruined my life. Then I sit up crying, wishing I could go back to when I was in high school, he wrote.
He was arrested once for selling crack out of his apartment. When the cops arrived, he reached into his sweatpants, and out of the leg fell a handgun. So, not a good look. He was next arrested for drunk driving, violating his probations, and a good few times after that. With the last time being in 2005, when he broke into someone's house in the middle of the night with handcuffs and 2 handguns. What he was going to do with them? Ooh, yikes. He served 2 years for that, and then he moved to Virginia, to Broadway in Virginia, where he lived with his parents for a while. He stayed there for a few years. He traveled around the lower 48 during those years, doing... The FBI is actually investigating to see if he is involved in some unsolved murders around the time he was in that area.
Investigators are now looking into his past and his travels here and elsewhere.
To see if they can come up with some sort of a common MO, common characteristics that could possibly link him to other killings in other states.
Places like Virginia and Las Vegas, Nevada.
He eventually returned to Anchorage in February 2016, and then about 4 or 5
This is a courtesy call from Merriweather Security Consulting. We're expanding our domestic operation, and
he shot the shit out of the cops, did a legger, somehow made it to Mexico. They fucking riddled him. Officer Salau got shot multiple times, but managed to get out of his car and return fire. While another officer, Mark Patsky, arrived and he too opened fire on James Dale Ritchie. James, taking fire from 2 sides, was killed and collapsed on the pavement, while Aaron Salau lay bleeding out on the cold November ground.
Good morning. I'm Chief Talley in the Anchorage Police Department. We have an officer who was ambushed. Anchorage had a citizen who was ambushed today. I think it made it very concerning because that citizen was a police officer. An officer was out on the streets in the early morning hours doing what we do each and every day and night. This officer was attempting to identify an individual that potentially involved in a theft. And almost immediately, the person who this officer came in contact with ambushed the officer.
Hi, it's Officer Slough. I want to thank everybody for everything that they've done for myself and my family, my APD family, my law enforcement family. I want to let everyone know that I am doing very well. I appreciate it.
Aaron Salau survived. Can't say the same for James. Pretty badass. It would be 5 months later before the police would formally announce that James Dale Ritchie was the serial killer they had been looking for. The city breathed easier after that. The homicides are still high enough there, to be fair.
As the deadliest year on record comes to an end in Anchorage, many questions remain about a series of killings linked to a single gun. Police and the FBI continue to investigate life and alleged crimes of former East High School star James Dale Ritchie, looking to establish whether he pulled the trigger in more than one murder.
As I said, the FBI is still investigating whether he is connected to, any other, unsolved homicides around, Virginia. It's believed he traveled around, like I said, the lower 48 quite a bit, so places like Virginia, Colorado, and more. So why did he do this? Well, that's the question. That is the question, yeah. I don't think many people have an answer for that, and if they do, I don't think it's a good one. We don't know. He never revealed. I mean, he got riddled. And the police never revealed why, what his motive was, why he would do this, but then again, he was a serial killer. So, just doing it for the crack. They never need a reason. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next one. Till then, take care of yourselves. Mike out.
Make some noise for the new Heat lineup, starring Spicy Crispy Chicken, Toast-Roll Sandwich, and Spicy Heat Sauce at Pollo Tropical!
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, we're going back, once again, to Alaska. Alaska, again. We're going to see what goes on up there. It's so isolated. I mean, does it even exist? Does it though? Ah, sure, here. I have my fun.
Does it even exist?
And so did James Dale Ritchie in the summer of 2016. James, J-Dog, was described as super intelligent. Unfortunately, he didn't use his gifts for good. Nuh-uh. So, there you have it. So, let's get into the story which I'm about to tell you. Which I'll do right now. And my intro sucks. Now, Anchorage has a, well, it was surprising to me, to be honest, but I guess there really is just nothing to do there. A comparatively high rate of crime compared to other U.S. cities. In 2018, Alaska actually got the coveted spot of most violent crimes. Gold medal! It was followed by New Mexico. Although then again, it's probably not very populated either, so... Fucking bears, man. Though the year we're going to, 2016, it was actually a year when Moidas were kind of low, funnily enough. I say that because we've already been to Alaska in 2016. That was the year David Grunwald died. And it's the year we're going to. The year we're going to because somebody was stalking the streets and parks of Anchorage. It began on the 3rd of July, a Sunday, with highs of about 17 degrees. It was about 20 to 8 that morning, and a cyclist cycling through Ship Creek Trail near downtown Anchorage found two people lying on the bike path. They quickly called the police. The two people found had been shot dead. They were identified as Brianna Foisey, 20 years old, and 41-year-old Jason Netter Sr. And so when the, investigation began, police didn't really have much to go on. Someone did report that a couple of hours prior, like around 3 or 4 a.m., they had heard about 6 gunshots, in the area, but that was about it. Brianna had a learning disability. She was born with a fetal alcohol disorder. She loved to sing.
Hello, this is Perfect 2 by Coffee.
She had struggled with drugs and had been homeless from time to time. Jason, too, was homeless. He lived right around the corner from where they were both killed, in a junkyard. Jason also battled with drug addiction and had just been released from prison. In fact, a friend of Jason's who shared the storage unit they lived in, with him, he told the police when the investigation began that he thought, maybe they had been killed. Maybe it was a drug deal gone awry or something like that.
Imagine finding yourself in a home for sale and realizing the hard way that it used to belong to a serial killer. My name's Adrian, and welcome back to Coffee House Crime. Now, this story, it really goes to show that you don't know what happens behind closed doors. Today we're looking at Springfield's most recent serial killer, Stuart Weldon, who in late 2017 through to 2018 killed 3 women in his home. So grab a coffee and sit back. This is the case of Stuart Weldon. Our story starts in Springfield, Massachusetts. In January 2020, a young couple were looking for a cozy place to move into. They were a stay-at-home couple, mostly into their gaming and looking after their cats. For this reason, they needed a comfortable place to sprawl, somewhere where they wouldn't have to travel too far to commute into work. They'd been looking for just over a month, and they were starting to know the area well and what prices to expect. And that is when they happened to come across 1333 Page Boulevard. For its price, the house had a decent size. It wasn't very old, and it was nicely below market average compared to the other houses in the area. So what gives? Why is it so cheap? The couple factored in that it was by a busy road and looked fairly dated, but it did have potential. So they scheduled in to visit the property the next day. Fast forward, and it is now 6 p.m. the next day. It was dark outside, and the couple were in the property with the estate agent checking it out. It was bigger than they imagined, and it definitely had a quaint charm to itself. The place had an off smell, but they shrugged it off, even joking at one point that the house had haunted vibes to it. This is where things get pretty creepy though. The couple, along with the estate agent, went downstairs into the basement. The area was divided into 3 rooms, connected without doors. First room held appliances and a boiler, nothing out of the ordinary. The next one, though, was dire. A concrete floor with a dilapidated shower. Unknown marks on the floors and walls. The final room was empty and bare, and the first thing they noticed when they got into this room was a lot of residual adhesive over the walls and ceiling. And it had something stuck to it. Upon closer inspection, the guy touched the sticky substance when he finally realized it used to be soundproof foam. He asked the realtor if he knew why the basement was soundproofed. Maybe the previous owner was a musician. That's when the realtor's face dropped, and he said, "Oh God, let's leave. I finally know why this place is still on the market." He ushered the two outside immediately, before explaining to them. It turns out that this house has a history. The previous owner wasn't a musician, and the soundproof foam was to mask out the sounds of his victims screaming while he raped, beat, and tortured them to death. For the previous occupant was Stuart Weldon, a very recent serial killer in the area, and the basement was where he held 3 of his victims captive, all 3 of them losing their lives there over a sustained period of time. So who is Stuart Weldon? To answer that question, we're going to have to go back about 2 years. The date was May the 27th, 2018. It was a Sunday, and police were operating routine traffic checks in the city. Checks are conducted to improve road safety in the area, and these checks include vehicle scans for orderly driving and also for broken car components. It was late in the evening, and police were on duty in Catherine Street. That is when they noticed a black Nissan Altima with a broken tail light. The small violation was exactly what police were looking for, so they followed the vehicle. After a couple minutes, police flashed their lights to pull the driver over, and as the driver stopped and police got out the car, the driver put his foot on the pedal and sped away. This started a high-speed chase throughout parts of the city, and police, they were quick to get back on the man's tail. While approaching his vehicle before he pulled away, the police officer described the man as a lighter black male, with a female in the passenger's seat. The black Nissan belonged to its driver, and that driver, so eager to get away from police, was a 40-year-old man called Stuart Weldon. He was a local to the area, living in Springfield since he was a teenager. He also wasn't unknown to law enforcement, being charged for multiple crimes before. Police chased Stuart for several minutes, and in that time had violated several traffic laws. It was clear that he was running away from something more than just a broken taillight. They finally intercepted him on Westford Avenue, hairpinning the front of his vehicle and therefore immobilizing him. Stuart fled from his car, but officers were quick to stop him, one officer grabbing him and throwing him to the ground. With his legs and head thrashing, he pointed his finger back to the car, screaming, "She has a gun, and there's a body in the trunk." The officers detained Stuart with handcuffs. and when they got to the car, they realized there was a really good reason why he was running. You see, Stewart's passenger, she didn't have a gun at all, and there was no body in the trunk. She wasn't even there by choice, actually. After being searched by police officers, she was cleared from being any danger to the public, and that's when it was pretty obvious that she needed medical attention as soon as possible. She cried out loud and thanked police for saving her life, claiming that Stewart had been holding her captive at his home for over a month and would not let her go. She was routinely sexually assaulted. She described how he often beat her with a hammer or any other object that he could find. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to the abdomen, a fractured jaw, large scrapes across her body, bruises, a leg infection, and marks from being hit with a blunt object. Officers recovered a large knife in his hoodie and a second in his back pocket. He was then arrested and taken into custody, later charged for torture, sexual assault and kidnap of his female passenger. But the story doesn't stop there. Following the allegations from Stewart's victim, police were keen to search his home, and at around the same time, Stewart's mother, who formerly owned the property, reported a foul smell coming from the home. This alerted officers and led them to 1333 Page Boulevard.
We begin, unfortunately, with a very disturbing story from Massachusetts. It's a kidnapping case that threatens to get so much worse after 3 bodies were found in a Massachusetts home. They searched the property in Springfield throughout the night. They say that this is the last known address of Stuart Logan.
When officers arrived, they too smelled the foul odor coming from inside. And between the night of May the 30th, 2018 and the following day, police officers would find 3 bodies in the home. The first in the garage, the second in the shed, and the third in the basement. 2 of the victims were found with their hands and feet bound with electrical cords and other cables. Officers also found sticks wrapped with wire, which were believed to have been used to beat them. Police later identified the bodies of the 3 victims to belong to Kayla Escalante from Ludlow, and 2 to be local Springfield residents, Ernestine Ryans and America Canales Leiden. Autopsy reports discovered that they were not victims of stabbings or bullet wounds, but instead were severely beaten to death in the property. Family members of America Canales Leiden reported her missing on December the 1st, 2017. She was a mother of 2 who loved to read and had an interest in urban fiction and mystery. She and her sister shared text messages shortly before she disappeared, but now her sister believes that those messages were not from her. 3 months after America's disappearance, Ernestine Ryans was reported missing on March the 18th. She was a mother and a grandmother and only just moved to Springfield. She was described as a kind, gentle spirit. Stewart's youngest victim, Kayla Escalante, never had a missing persons report filed. She was, however, born on March the 30th, 1991, and left behind a daughter. The more detectives looked into Stewart's case, the more sinister it became. You see, this story isn't about how the system failed Stewart. Quite the opposite, in fact. It's about how the system failed keeping others safe from him. Investigations into Stewart's past uncovered 7 other victims to him, all of which are still alive to this day. All 7, though, accused him on a variety of different offences, including assault and rape. His long list of crimes started in 1997, when Stuart Logan was charged with kidnap, sexual assault, and unlawful possession of a weapon. In 2002 and 2003, he was also arrested twice for resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. And in 2008, he was arrested for assaulting an officer. His record continued in 2010, when his charges included breaking and entering, assault with a dangerous weapon, assault to an officer, and threat of murder, all of which resulted in an 18-month jail sentence. He again assaulted a police officer in 2015, and again in 2017. Seriously, what is it with this guy? In February 2018, Stewart was supposed to be wearing an ankle monitor, as per the court's ruling over a previous charge. However, when he cut off his ankle monitor, police attempted to check up on him, but he was gone, missing ever since. To put it bluntly, the past 2 decades of his history were horrifically riddled with glaring warning signs of his capability to impose harm to others. And despite this, law enforcement were too inattentive to react to his impending arrest. And unfortunately, with previous victims, it cost them their lives. Since Stuart Weldon's arrest on May 27, 2018, he has now been indicted with 52 charges of varying offences and stands on bail of $2 million. Among those 52 are 3 charges for murder of the first degree. Just being found guilty of one of those charges would result in life in prison without the possibility of parole. And although he hasn't formally been trialed yet, it's pretty obvious what the verdict will be. I mean, it's pretty clear-cut. Despite this, though, he has recently pleaded not guilty. Stuart Weldon currently remains behind bars until his trial, which has been delayed multiple times due to COVID. And that's the ever-unfolding story of Stuart Weldon. It's almost undoubtable that he would have carried on his long streak of torture, rape, and murder, all of which was uncovered from a broken rear light. What would have happened to his most recent victim if Stuart hadn't been pulled over that evening by police? A neighbour actually reported just after Stuart's arrest that he was showing an uncomfortable amount of attention to his 21-year-old daughter. Just a month prior, Stuart had stalked her home one night after she finished her job at a Dunkin' Donuts nearby. Stuart's aunt Connie believes that something snapped in him, though there is data and evidence to suggest that he has been on a long list of prescriptions to combat his mental health for decades. Whatever it is, though, there is no excuse. I hope he stays behind bars for life. And next time I'm looking for a house, I think I'll be checking up on its history before I step in its front door. Thank you so much for watching my video today. I hope you enjoyed the case. If you did, please remember to subscribe to Coffee House Crime. I do cases here weekly for both crimes and unsolved mysteries. What do you think about Stuart Weldon's case? And what do you think about other evidence that may come out after his trial is finished? Do you think there may be more victims? Let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Thank you once again for watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of each other. Goodbye.
So when in doubt, just say, let me talk to my manager. Next, Carvana's 100% online shopping experience. Carvana lets people buy a car, get this, from their couch. Oh, how disruptive. No salesman there to help me pick out the car I need. I mean, how does anyone find a car on this site without someone like us checking in? She's a beauty. Oh, golly. I can help you find the color you want. That sounds nice. Let me talk to my manager.
Buy your next car 100% online with Carvana.
And participants present an unprecedented documentary event. For the first time on record, the children of Nazi Germany give their final account in what may well be the last testimony of its kind.
Ja, guck mal, wir haben es nicht bewusst, aber Täter sind bei tun lassen.
Honored at the Venice Film Festival and by critics worldwide, The Times gives it 4 stars. Final Account is an ambitious, exceptional, and important achievement.
E você observa isso, e olha que as pessoas dentro de mim estão olhando.
It serves as a timely and ominous warning about everyday evil and what happens when it reaches a boiling point. This is the past speaking to the present.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video what we're going to examine is what David Dooley did. Or did he? Back to Kentucky. I've been going there a lot lately, huh? And to the year 2012 when this all began in a sciencey type building. Look, that's not important. What is important is that this would end up going to the courts not just once, but twice, 2 times. But would the correct decision be made in each case? Or like, you know, no, or whatever. Like, this is a crazy one. Let's get into it. It was very early on the morning of the 29th of May 2012 that Michelle Mockbee rocked up to work. That Tuesday, it was going to get hot, hit about 27 degrees. But before it would get there, it would get ice cold. God, I hate that I just said that. Michelle Mockbee worked at Thermo Fisher Scientific. It was located in an industrial park near Florence, North Kentucky. What do they do? Yeah, it's a good question. Kinda everything, really. It's just alphabet soup to me. But like lab equipment, that kind of stuff. But that's not what Michelle did there. She was an office coordinator and head of payroll. And, well, I guess she must have liked it, because she worked there for 17 years at this stage. She even met her husband, Dan Mockbee, there. They started dating at an office Christmas party. Michelle was 42 years old, had 2 daughters with Dan, and was by all accounts a well-liked, familiar figure in Thermo Fisher. That morning, Michelle arrived at work just before 6 a.m. About an hour later, a 911 call was made.
Yes, ma'am, I'm calling for Thermo Fisher Scientific, and I just walked in our office, and I think somebody killed somebody upstairs in our office. Okay, what makes you think somebody killed somebody? She's laying there underground, covered up, and there's blood all over up the floor. Okay, is it somebody that worked there? Yeah, it looks like her name is Michelle Mockbee, and then they got her, like, her whole body covered with blood. Can't get her head or anything. And it is obvious she's dead, right? Yes, how many other office people are there now? There's the maintenance man, a cleaning man, he's the one that's been when we found her. What's the name of the day? Dave.
And so the investigation began. It appears that once she pulled into the building, she popped by the warehouse, clocking in, and then went up to her office. It was then roughly an hour later that a co-worker, a supervisor who was walking by, noticed something on the ground. Kinda hard to miss, a big red stain on the carpet. The supervisor then asked the janitor, David Dooley, for help, finding the source of, that. And it led them to Michelle. Now, it was a very distressing scene what happened to Michelle. She had been beaten brutally, tied up, gagged, and a plastic bag over her head. It had been savage. From where the blood was, it seemed she had been attacked outside her office, and then dragged to where her body lay. Her office door was still locked. She'd been attacked before she got in, most likely so. So she was attacked right after she arrived at work. Maybe somebody even waiting for her. But, like, who could do something like this, and for what reason a lab equipment maker factory thingy? Everyone knew each other. It was a pretty close-knit you know, place of work, and there was only 13 people on the premises that morning. It was in an industrial park, so not like, you know, someone could just waltz in, shooting the shit. And there was security due to the nature of the items they produce. So her office door was locked. But what was interesting is that it seemed like someone had tried to break in. There were markings all over it. Thing is, there was nothing really inside the office. She did payroll, yeah, sure, but like, it's not like she had cash in there, you know what I mean? Like, dollar bills just laying around. Why would somebody want to break in? Michelle's husband, Dan, you know, he was contacted then, you know, for what you must imagine must have been like the worst phone call of his life. But at the same time, you know, the detective's immediate question was, where were you? He was at home in bed. He wasn't working that morning. They made him take a polygraph. He passed, so the police swiftly moved on. And so the focus then, you know, moved to who was in the building at that time. Now, everybody who was in the building that morning, you know, as soon as the police arrived, they were detained and questioned, and none of them looked like they could have done this. Like, what I mean by that is there was no evidence. It was a bloody scene, and there was no blood or anything like that on any of them. It was a violent scene, but none of them looked like they had just committed violence. So, next up, there were security cameras that needed having a go at, you know, to see who was knocking around the building that morning. And they saw something, a vehicle leaving when all others were entering to start their shift. Was there a 14th person who disappeared before the police were called? No, because that vehicle belonged to somebody who had been there, David Dooley, the janitor. The footage was at 6:31 a.m., just after the time it was believed Michelle had been killed, maybe half an hour before she was discovered and the police called. Then he returned around 7, right before the 911 call was made. Time enough to go, wash, change, you know, go and make it look like you didn't do what you just did. He also never mentioned it to the police that morning that he had left and then come back 30 minutes later. So the police then went and followed up with old Dave. You know, they went to speak with him at his home, and they spoke too with David's wife, Janet, who also worked at Thermo Fisher. Everybody works in Thermo Fisher, apparently. Big employer.
I came back here, and went back to Fisher. Came back here? I came back here, yeah. So I couldn't get hold of my wife, and I came home and make sure she was okay. Yesterday, I didn't think about that.
They then asked Janet, when did she see David? As in, did she see him that morning, or sometime later after he first spoke to the police?
Yeah, yesterday after.
This would prove contentious as to what she said, as the reporting is bollocks. Essentially, they were asking, did he go home? Did he go home, or did he go somewhere and do some evidence tampering? The detective would say she said no, he never came home that morning. Though in another interview, she would change that and say she did see him that morning. She said he came home to change Rick's pants.
So the detective that he didn't come home that day. Yes.
Make some noise for the new spicy chicken lineup at Pollo Tropical, starring spicy crispy chicken, spicy tostón sandwich, and heat sauce. Get them while they're hot.
Regardless, these discrepancies were drawing the police like a moth to, you know, and they weren't helping themselves. They were digging a hole constantly, the Dooleys, one they would never escape from. David would say no, he never ripped no pants. He was worried about Janet. He thought she was unwell, so he popped home to check on her. Simply that, and she was grand. So the police, well, you know, executed search warrants on David Dooley's his vehicle and their apartment, and found nothing. No blood, no... But that didn't stop them. And almost 4 months to the day after Michelle Mockbee was murdered, on the 27th of September, David Dooley was arrested for her murder.
jail, motherfucker. Damn.
Details in the brutal murder of a northern Kentucky mom. According to documents 9 News obtained, Michelle Mockbee had deep cuts to her wrists and blunt force trauma to her head. Mockbee's alleged killer went before a Boone County judge this morning. David Dooley worked with Mockbee at Thermo Fisher Scientific, where the mother of 2 was found dead in May. Today, Dooley's attorney argued prosecutors have no evidence against him, requesting Dooley's bond be reduced.
Nobody knows what it's like. They said, oh, my wife just get a phone call. I get to see her husband 45 minutes a week through a glass window. And you know what? Michelle's family doesn't see her at all. So I just can only imagine how they feel. But right now, I can't worry about that anymore. I got to fight for a man that's innocent, and I'm going to.
This would be a hard case for the prosecution to prove, in court. They had no DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses, no slam dunk evidence. Just, discrepancies, really. And that's kind of it. Discrepancies mainly as to who left very suspiciously that morning. But that wouldn't stop them, and by golly, they would get her done. It was the process of elimination of that John Dooley. All other employees would have been in the warehouse. They was the one done.
Prosecutor said in opening statements, every employee who was in
I
the
got a little bit more.
Mockbee was murdered put it
Vince
down
came
for their
today.
time, except David Dooley.
I don't understand the rules.
And a motive for murder had been uncovered. Remember the marks on the door? Shinny. It appears that David and Janet who worked as a cleaner in the Thermo Fisher plant, they had been beefing up the hours they were working. They were contract workers, but they would also clock in to get some overtime. So when David was working and Janet was off, David would bring Janet's card, clock her in. Janet would do the same for David. They were actually tripled in their hours. That morning, the prosecution said David had been trying to break into Michelle's office as she handled payroll, and he was going to fiddle with the time cards. See, they said, Michelle had found out, but she surprised him that morning, and he ended up beating her to death. The defense said this is some circumstantial bullshit, and most importantly, none of his DNA was found on the scene. In fact, there was DNA found that didn't match either David nor Michelle. The prosecution's answer was, of course nothing was found, Who's the only person that always will have cleaning products on them? The janitor. What else might a janitor have?
Medical examiner also testified
Louise
that he believed the murder
and
weapon
Ricky,
was an
not Louise, Ricky and Vince came and did the quarters already. Yeah. No, I didn't get none. They took all the quarters and filled up. Yeah, okay. Oh. Okay, I'm coming. Okay. 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 All right. I will. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Fuck, man. Motherfucker! Fuck you. Fuck you so.
Level 1 to do in Puerto Rico is hard.
flash.
Spicy crispy chicken, spicy toast-roll sandwich, and hot sauce. Get 'em while they're hot.
Regardless, these discrepancies were drawing the police like a moth to, and they weren't helping themselves. They were digging a hole constantly, the Dooleys, one they would never escape from. David would say no, he never ripped no hands. He was worried that Janet, he thought she was unwell, so he thought he wasn't checking her. Simply that, and she was grand. So the police, executed search warrants on David Dooley's, his vehicle, and in their apartment, and then nothing. No blood, no. But that didn't stop them. And almost 4 months to the day after Michelle Mockbee was murdered, on the 27th of September, David Dooley was arrested for her murder.
Jail, motherfucker, jail. Now, in the brutal murder of a northern Kentucky mom, according to documents 9 News obtained, Michelle Mockbee had deep cuts to her wrists and blunt force trauma to her head. Mockbee's alleged killer went before a Boone County judge this morning. David Dooley worked with Mockbee at Thermo Fisher Scientific, where the mother of two was found dead in May. Today, Dooley's attorney argued prosecutors have no evidence against him, requesting bond be reduced.
Somebody knows what it's like. They send her home and wait to get a phone call. I get to see her husband 45 minutes a week through a glass window. And the Michelle people don't just steer it off. And I can only imagine how they feel. But right now, I can't worry about that anymore. I got to fight for a man that's innocent, and I'm going to.
This would be a hard case for the prosecution to prove. In court, they had no DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses, no slam dunk evidence. Just discrepancies, really. Discrepancies mainly in very suspicious late that morning.
Ricky and Vince came and did the quarters already. Yeah. No, I didn't get nothing. They took all the quarters and filled up. Yeah, okay. Oh. Okay, I'm coming. Okay. 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 All right.
I have a question for you. Do you feel like ironing my uniforms for me?
Yeah, not. When is it gonna be done? What you can do? You can just turn the iron on yourself.
How do you do it? They should be done in a few minutes.
Merriweather Security Consulting. How can I help? Goodbye, then.
hold the button down. Don't beat it.
You okay?
Yep.
Okay, here's $1. I'm gonna get me a soda, okay?
It's in the second show. Behind the milk. And take a gallon of milk too.
You won't believe what I did. I did not bring the right uniform.
Yes. All right, bro.
Call me if you need me.
I got
If
you.
you need me, call me.
I got you.
If you need me, call me. If you need me, I will run you.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
You want to try this phone case for your phone?
No, this one's alright. It's brand new. Probably won't even fit my phone because you have to have the other case to fit around it. And this one's too small too. That one has a magnetic one. So.
Oh, okay.
You can keep it for your backup.
No, my phones will fit in it.
Oh, is it too big or too small?
Too big. So I'll throw it away.
Then it'd be part of the millions of other ones that have been tossed away throughout the years. I know I've tossed away a lot of them. Motherfuckers be losing their grip.
It's time to clean out your home and move your expert things into storage with our easy 100% online rental process.
Back with our politics lead, the Republican-controlled legislature in Arkansas just overrode the Republican governor's veto. So there will be a new law in Arkansas banning doctors from treating any children going through any transitioning procedures or treatments. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson said the bill targeting transgender kids was way too broad and blames, quote, vast government